Hi, this is Judge Harry Bowden with Child Support Court Vodcast. Make sure you go to childsupportcourttv.com. Check out the new videos, our sponsors, and get to Ask Judge Harry, where you can call in every Tuesday from 9:30 to 11 and ask Judge Harry. Thank you for being a loyal viewer of Child Support Court, the Vodcast, with Judge Harry Bowden.
GetMyBabyMoney.com.
Get my baby money. Get your money, baby, get your money, money. Get my baby money.
Welcome back to Child Support Court, the Vodcast with Judge Harry Bowden. Ooh, we got a good one today. I have a special guest. The one, the only, someone who is smart, just as beautiful and knowledgeable, and is here to help us all. Miss Janelle Dawson. She is a therapist. Janelle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Let our listening audience know a little bit about you. What do you do?
So I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing for almost 9 years now. I work with mental health clients. I work with marriages or couples and families.
Excellent,
Yep.
excellent. I invited her here today because I consider her an expert, and she has a thriving practice that you definitely want to call and get some information and you want to get some help on, but she's going to be here today to help us. And the issue that we're talking about is what makes a healthy child? How do parents support bringing up a healthy child, or how do they destroy them?
Right.
Now, you're so gracious to say Janelle, but I know you are a therapist, which
Yes.
is a professional.
Yes.
And Ms. Dawson, I want to start off by saying, in terms of children, which is our focus,
Yeah.
what makes a whole child healthy in growing up?
So being in a loving, respectful environment is ultimately what helps with the child's healthiness, mental healthiness, and emotional healthiness. A lot of times parents struggle with the emotional health because we're not really thinking about how children feel. We want children to stay in a child's place, and we're not really recognizing that they have feelings and they're trying to process and understand life around them.
Does that go hand in hand with the issue of a child's development? I talk about it, but I believe that a parent is a child's first God.
Yes.
So when they see Goddess raising sand with the God, the male, then what does that do to them?
They mirror behaviors. So whatever they see, they reflect. So if you are angry, and that's how you lash out, is not really talking, but more so just lashing out, it's very likely your child is going to do the same thing because that's all they know.
Now you brought up a very interesting point. You said talking. Does it make a difference on how we communicate in terms of just being calm? Okay.
Yep. So this is something that people don't really realize when they're talking to children. Is a lot of times we'll say things like they understand, but in reality, kids don't really understand a lot. It's up to us to teach them. So
when do they start understanding? When do they get it?
it takes a while because I work with adults and there's still things that I have to teach them.
Whoa.
They don't get.
Whoa. So are you saying that sometimes adults are just old children?
Yeah, at times, yeah.
And what causes that?
What causes adults to be
Old
older children is lack of education, lack of understanding, really the understanding piece. Because we all interpret things the way that we know best. But what I like to do a lot of times with my clients or when I'm talking to people in general is ask them, what do they mean? Because your definition of something could be totally different from mine. So a lot of times when couples are arguing, I have to ask them, well, what do you mean by this? Because you saying something, I can interpret it to be totally different because my perception of life is a little different. But when I understand you by asking that question of what do you mean, I get clarification.
Ooh. I tell you what, we'll be right back. You all hold on. Gonna hear a word from our sponsor. Y'all come back now. Getting married has been made easier. Don't wait. If you are in love, get your wedding ceremony performed virtually or in person at one of our many locations. Get your nuptials in no time. Now you have a friend in the wedding business. Go to streamingvows.com today. And we're back with Janelle Dawson, the greatest therapist in Atlanta, Georgia. And she's helping us to learn what to and what not to do when it comes to supporting the child. How does a couple that is not living together, does that exacerbate the issue or create a larger problem? How does that come into it?
It can, because when you're around someone and you can understand them a little bit more, maybe. But if you're living in separate households, you may do things one way, this person does things another way. And if there's no conversation about what we're going to do together, especially with raising this child, where we have a common understanding and agreement about that, then what happens a lot of times is children have a difficult time adjusting.
Whoa, now you brought up a very solid point.
Yeah.
We're talking about co-parenting.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
I want to ask you about this, then get back to co-parenting.
Okay.
Do children play off discord to get what they want?
Absolutely.
And what's the deal?
Yeah. Kids, when they know these two people are at odds, they pick up on it. They know that this person and this person do not get along with each other. And I know that I'm in the middle. And so I may play one person to get what I want. I mean, kids do that even in two-parent households. Because if they notice, these parents, they're not communicating with each other. So I can kind of get over on this person because they're not communicating with this person. So if mom and dad are both on the same page, it's much harder for the kid to play. Because, hey, if I go to mom and she says this, then I know dad is in agreement with that. But if I go to mom and she says this, but then I go to dad and he says the opposite, oh, yeah, I'm going to definitely play that game.
You don't have that wall of authority.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to the issue of co-parenting. I have advocated, and I say co-parenting is where parents have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you help people in putting those plans together?
I actually have not. Actually, I did once a while ago. But it would be helpful if people would maybe go to a therapist and discuss creating that plan together.
Oh, what keeps people from just sitting down and saying, I'll do the dishes and if you cook?
Exactly. People don't communicate.
And that lack of communication is picked up by the child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we talk about a unit that is separate, a mother and a father, biological, that are separated, at what point in time does the child start to develop some real issues?
I would say it really depends, again, on the parents' relationship. Because if a child is adjusting to, or let's just say they grew up and their parents were always separated, they already know that this is what it is. They already know on this particular day or days I see mom, on this particular days I see dad. Now, there can be difficulty if the parents were together and then they divorced and that child is trying to adjust to the difference in schedules, the changes that are happening. Because I'm used to seeing the two of you guys together and now you guys are apart and we have to figure out a new way of living. So that can be a little bit difficult, but it's also important to have a conversation with your child. Because I think a lot of times what happens is parents don't have the conversation with the child, but what the child hears is the parents arguing. And most times their arguing is about, not necessarily about the child, but I'm supposed to see this kid on this day, or you're supposed to get the kid on this day. So again, back to what I was saying about understanding, how a child will perceive and understand that would be, they're fighting about me, this is all my fault. And then they start to develop a narrative about them that is probably not true.
Well, when you say them, they start to develop a narrative about themselves. What are the long-term effects that you've seen in that with, I guess, older children?
Okay. So they may feel like they're a burden to everybody around them. They may feel a lot of unnecessary guilt. You looking like...
No, I'm looking because I hear you, and you treat that in adults who carry this issue until adulthood.
Absolutely.
And how does that play into when they try to get a new boo?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. I really am interested in this time frame in which parents, understand that children mimic them, but at a time where they have to start cooperating. When should that happen?
Again, what do you mean?
Okay. Go keep the judge straight. Don't judge me now. Okay, I mean, at some point in time, you say children are great with their boundaries because they know what they want.
Yes.
At what point in time do we as parents start, I guess for lack of a better word, start confusing them?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. My daughter, she was about maybe 2 or 3. She wanted dessert. I can't remember exactly what it was. But she wanted some dessert. And I think we gave it to her. But she wanted a spoon. We gave her a fork. Okay. So what does she do? Starts acting crazy, right? So she's getting angry and frustrated because she doesn't know how to say, I don't want this. I mean, she could have, but she was so frustrated because no one was listening to her. Because we're like, just eat it. And so she eventually throws the fork. She might have been 2 actually. So she eventually throws it. So at that point, I realized, okay, she's frustrated. There's something else going on. Maybe we didn't give her what she actually wanted. So my husband starts yelling at her, right? Which doesn't help the situation because now you yelling and she yelling. So everybody mad, right?
Okay.
So I told him, you need to stop. And I looked at her and said, what's going on? Did you not want the fork? She said, no. I said, well, what is it? Spoon. Oh, you want to eat this with a spoon. I got it now. So I have to tell him, you're not helping the situation just because she's frustrated and she throws it. As a kid, you don't know how to express your frustration, but you know you're frustrated. Right. So it's up to us. That's why I said you got to teach them emotional health, but a lot of us don't even know our own emotions. Ooh. So when you understand emotions, then you can start to help kids with understanding their emotions and expressing it in a better way. So it really goes back to emotional health because I tell everybody, kids, or all of us, are emotional beings. Emotions is the only way children do communicate in the beginning. Right. Because that's all they have. They don't have the words. So it's up to us to understand what they're feeling and then help them communicate that.
A few shows back, I gave 6 examples on how to co-parent or how to deal in toxic relationships. When you have individuals who are parents, they don't co-parents, but they're parents, and you find when one does not know how to control, communicate, and actually give what's needed emotionally, what do you tell that other parent to help them, if anything?
Right.
What can you tell them to help them?
Yeah. So I give everybody what's called an emotional wheel, a feelings wheel. Okay. Because, like I said, all of us, for the most part, will communicate happy, anger, sadness maybe. Sadness is a little light, and maybe we might do a little fear, but not really. But we're definitely going to express maybe when we're happy, but definitely when we're angry. But when you look at this emotions wheel, it's 100 emotions on there. And I'm like, and we experience all of them. We just don't know how to communicate it.
Really?
Yes.
Do we communicate non-verbally?
Yes, we'll communicate it non-verbally or with anger. Anger is like the big one. So for example, if I'm disappointed in you, I don't say I'm disappointed. I just act out of anger. If I'm worried about you, I don't say I'm worried about you. I act out of anger.
Look, does that emotional will also have on it the attraction that one gets to another person?
No.
It does not.
Mm-mm.
So two people are there and all of a sudden they're there. How does that happen with no emotion?
So attraction is a little, it's a little interesting.
Okay.
Because we may go off of initial attraction when we were first dating, right? Okay, that person, they cute, right? But what's interesting, what I found is how we end up repeating the same cycle that we saw with our parents. So you know how you say like, I'm dating my mom? Like, or like you end up seeing that and you're like, how did that happen? Like when you really start to think about it, like, this person acts exactly like my parental figure.
Okay.
I don't know how it happens, but it's something about, I think it's what it's called is it's normalcy. So if the way that you're interacting with me is normal to me. So if I grew up in a toxic household and I meet somebody that's toxic, that's my norm. So I'm gonna be attracted to that because that's all I've ever known. But if I meet somebody that's not toxic, it's like, get away from me.
Okay, listen, hold on right there. We'll be right back after word from our commercial. Y'all don't go nowhere now. Getting married has been made easier. Don't wait. If you are in love, get your wedding ceremony performed virtually or in person at one of our many locations. Get your nuptials in no time. Now you have a friend in the wedding business. Go to streamingvows.com today. Well, that's interesting because now the question I have is, if you get to that normalcy, okay, the question I would ask is, how can a person who does not consider it norm, you just went there, how do they help that other person to say, whoa, you know, there's a new thing going on?
The other person has to be willing. They have to be willing to change. They have to be willing to see it. But if they don't want to see it, or if they don't have that ability to reflect and see, oh, wait a minute, there are some things about me that maybe are not healthy. Maybe if I take a moment and listen versus being combative. A lot of people are defensive. They're easily defensive. If somebody calls them out about something, they get defensive. But if you're in a place to want to actually hear and listen, then you'll be willing to change.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to go there. Why is it that when there are unequal normals, that one person often wants to change the other person?
Right.
What happens there?
And that's the other thing. And that's why I said that other person has to be willing to.
Okay.
Because trying to force someone to change, it's not going to do.
But why does that person want them to change?
I don't know. It could be a control thing at times.
Oh, so you talking about somebody that want to be in control?
Sometimes, yeah.
Could they feel as though they have an upper hand? Okay. Do they feel as though they want to make a man? I mean, a person. None of you have that issue where you want to make somebody the way you want to make them. But if it gets there, what do you do to protect that child when you realize that there is no change in this person?
So when there is no change in a person, one, you have to accept it. That's the biggest thing. You have to accept, okay, well, that's how that person is going to be. So now I have to make decisions based off of that. But if you're trying to force this person to change, they're not going to change. Again, it's going to cause discord and all this stuff. But if I accept the fact that, you know what, this person is never going to, for example, this person is always going to be late. I have to just accept it first. Hey, that person will probably be 15 minutes late. So if I set a time of 1 o'clock, I'm going to expect that person to probably show up at 1:15. I'm not going to force it anymore because I'm going to be like, you didn't show up at 1 o'clock. And now, again, we're having issues. I'm just going to accept the fact that maybe that's just something that you are incapable of doing. And I have to just accept it.
Do you?
Do you accept it?
Do you have to accept it?
Well, you don't have to accept it.
Because that's my next question. If you realize that the acceptance is not what you want,
Mm-hmm.
how now do you ease out of it and still protect that child?
So I know some people, like for example, if a person says, okay, I'm going to show up on Saturday to take little Bobby to wherever, and then they don't come. All right. Then they do it again, second Saturday. Okay. Third Saturday. All right. At this point, you're causing a lot of disappointment in my child.
Who, the one who doesn't show up?
Yeah.
What about the one who keeps saying okay?
Right, exactly. So it becomes both of you guys at this point.
Okay.
And so to protect the child, it would be then to say or to set boundaries with that parent.
Boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Set boundaries with that parent because you are saying that you're going to do X, Y, and Z and you're not doing it, which is now not okay for me because now it's hurting my child. So for example, if that person isn't showing up, it's almost like, unfortunately, you have to cut them off in a sense. Until you show me that you're going to show up.
Was she trying to control me? What's that about?
But I've given you opportunities to show and prove yourself. And so if you've proven yourself to be this way, I'm only going based off of what I see. And one thing I will say is, after one or two instances, you can't really say that that's that person's pattern. Yeah, because what we do is make overgeneralizations where we're like, oh, that person did it one time, they're like this, but that's not necessarily true.
Is something more behind that?
Well, it's more so like, okay, if somebody messes up once, sometimes we're like, oh, that person always does but that's not necessarily true. Now, if they've done it like 4 or 5 times, okay, now we got a pattern going on here, right?
Okay.
So if I've given you an opportunity and you've proven. There's evidence, multiple occasions of you doing the same thing. Yeah, for me to protect my child, I got to set boundaries with you. So now, in a sense, you have to work your way back up to show me that you will show up for my child.
Okay.
And so if you've proven yourself to be this way, I'm only going based off of what I see. And one thing I will say is, after 1 or 2 instances, you can't really say that that's that person's pattern. Yeah, because what we do is make overgeneralizations where we're like, oh, that person did it one time, they're like this, but that's not necessarily true.
Is something more behind that?
Well, it's more so like, okay, if somebody messes up once, sometimes we're like, oh, that person always does but that's not necessarily true. Now, if they've done it like 4 or 5 times, okay, now we got a pattern going on here, right?
Okay.
So if I've given you an opportunity and you've proven. There's evidence, multiple occasions of you doing the same thing. Yeah, for me to protect my child, I got to set boundaries with you. So now, in a sense, you have to work your way back up to show me that you will show up for my child. But until then, I do have to protect my child.
What about the issue where you have a parent who gets a new person that they're interested in? What effect does it have with the parent who is a primary custodian, say, has an issue with this new person? What kind of issues does that cause with the child?
Yeah, that's another one. And again, going back to boundaries. Because if I get a new person, it really shouldn't affect how we are parenting.
Say what?
If I get somebody new, it should not affect how we parent.
Is that because you set boundaries before or you set boundaries once it happens?
So if you're choosing to co-parent, that's what it strictly needs to be. And a lot of people cross boundaries.
You mean they leave the back door open?
Oh,
shit. Oh, did I say that?
They leave that back door open and it causes confusion in terms of what this relationship is again.
Who does it cause confusion with?
The parents, which then will trickle down to the child.
Unless they have an agreement.
Unless they have an agreement. Unless they've agreed, okay, we're going to work on this again. We're going to get back together.
Is that because the emotional Paul, can you control, how is the lack of control of emotions the real problem?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
In your practice or experience, who have you found has more lack of control of emotion, men or women?
That's a hard one.
Why? Just based on your experience.
Well,
Or is it 50-50?
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to say just because I do think that women have more freedom to be emotionally expressive because we're women. Because society said, as women, you have emotions. That's it's a woman trait, right? It's not a woman trait; it's a human trait.
Okay.
But because society has given us that permission to be able to be a little bit more expressive with our emotions, we can be, but it doesn't mean that we have control over it. Okay. Now on the men's side, it is men tend to be a little bit more logical because they don't recognize that their logical response is sometimes very emotional too, but they don't realize that they don't view it as that.
Whoa! You said a lot. Whoa, Millie. You said men, and I'm going to put me in there. Mm-hmm. We're logical, more logical, presumably, mm-hmm. but we don't realize that our logic is based upon emotion. Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. At what point in time do we have a pecking order and start realizing that the logic needs to supersede the emotion, or the emotion needs to supersede the logic?
From having conversations like these, going to therapy, because a lot of people don't realize that there has to be a balance between the two. So yes, men are more logical, but they don't realize that there's still underlying emotions that are at work, that are still playing. So if you understand a little bit more about your emotions, then yes, you could be a little bit more logical in how you may approach situations. Because then I can speak to something I told a lot of my men clients is sometimes you got to speak to her emotions. You got to speak to it. But if you don't have any awareness of it and you're just rah, 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 you're angry, you're yelling at her. Guess what? If you're yelling at somebody, there's an emotional undertone there. Mm. And you don't understand it, but you think you're being logical because, I mean, it makes sense. But you don't realize that the emotion is actually what is driving the conversation.
Is that the connection that moms are able to get to the children and men are not able to, mostly? Maybe,
yeah. Because, and it's interesting because there's a difference too in how we raise the boys versus the girls. So I was actually talking to somebody the other day about how we raise children. When, for example, if my 4-year-old was to trip and fall, she's going to cry. And I'm going to go over there and give her a hug, right? Right. Let a 4-year-old boy trip and fall. And he starts crying because he hurt himself. What is the parent going to do?
Get up, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what dad's going to do. Why are you crying? You don't cry,
yeah.
Right?
But dads don't do that to girls.
Yeah. You're right.
So from the beginning, we shut boys down with their emotions from the beginning. So that's why there's no awareness of the emotion, but the emotion is still there. So if I trip and fall, okay, my dad just yelled at me, basically told me to get it together, stop crying. So the next time I fall, I'm still hurting, but I gotta act like I don't hurt.
Yeah.
So how many times does that happen over the course of a young boy's life that then follows him into adulthood?
And vice versa, when you have a young girl who is told that she can't get hurt or doesn't need to be hurt.
Right. Okay. Yep. And then that's the thing with women is, like I said, even though we can be a little bit more expressive because we maybe didn't learn how to process our emotions.
You brought up another whole term. How do you process your emotions?
So you can process through talking and writing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, like for me, when I was younger, I used to have a journal, a diary. So if I was doing God knows what at the time, I would write down how I was feeling. And so writing it down, and I tell all my clients, when you write stuff down, you're able to actually see what you're thinking and make sense of it. Because when you can actually see it versus it being in your head, you're like, okay, Maybe I was tripping.
Well, let me ask you this. Is doing also processing, kicking a can, punching a bag? Is that processing or what?
It's transferring energy, but it's not processing because you may not understand, because processing is really about understanding. You don't understand why you mad and why you kicking the can and stuff like that. But it just transfers that emotional energy, so it might get it out, but you may not know exactly what it was that triggered you.
So you're saying that the process of processing leads to understanding, whereas the transfer is simply an outlet, but may not lead to understanding. Is that pretty consistent when adults get together at the club? Oh, in the club. And next thing you know, they transferred emotions, one processing and one transferring, and the next thing you know, you have a new person who is who they are, and have to figure it out with two people who still don't know who they are.
Right.
Wow. So how can we help? How can we, and I say we because one of the things we do on this show is that we are really wanting to help, and what I call the issue of child support is also parent support. Okay? So how do we lend that parent support for somebody who transfers and doesn't process? I know I'm getting heavy. Judge Bowden's getting heavy. Hold on, we'll be right back. You stay there. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Getting married has been made easier. Don't wait. If you are in love, get your wedding ceremony performed virtually or in person at one of our many locations. Get your nuptials in no time. Now you have a friend in the wedding business. Go to streamingvows.com today. And we're back with Janelle Dawson, the one and only therapist that I have. Let's go. All right, so how do, when you have that dichotomy of the male and the female, one processes, one transfers, how do they impact that child? Is it an issue where before they can actually help that child learn how they need to be, they first need to work on themselves?
Yep. So I believe in the top-bottom approach, like top-down approach, where a lot of times people will try to work with the kids because it's like, okay, the kids are the future, right? So a lot of people want to work with the kids and, really teach them But what happens when that child goes back into the environment that is not good for them?
That's like when they get in the court system and they go to a program or somebody.
Yep.
Okay.
So yes, it starts with the parents. The parents have to be in a much better space, an emotionally healthy place, a mentally healthy place. Because if they are there, then they are capable of teaching the children the skills and the tools and knowledge, all that they know, to make them healthy adults. So I wrote a book. I don't think I told you.
No, you didn't. What's the name of your book?
It's called The Mommy Makeover of the Mind.
The Mommy Makeover of the Mind. And where can we get this book?
Amazon.
On Amazon. The Mommy Makeover of the Mind. Now, do we have a daddy makeover?
No, I do not have that. People
Maybe
been asking about that.
Yes.
But, men can read it too, because you can still get a lot out of it, because you can apply it to just parenthood in general.
Okay.
But that was my whole purpose of writing the book, was to teach moms to maintain their identity while being a parent. But also, if you're in an emotionally healthy place, then you can teach your child what is best for them.
Now I'm gonna start something right here. Why not have the counterpart dads?
I just haven't sat down and wrote it. I've had a lot of people ask me about that one. But I just haven't, because a lot of times Moms are the ones that are the main person that is
primary caretaker,
yeah.
primary custody. And that's something that we talk about on this show. That doesn't mean that dads are incapable.
That is absolutely true. They're absolutely capable. But I think that because of how society has put us in these roles, in these positions, that a lot of times men just assume, oh, that's what you're naturally supposed to be this person. But it's like, but we did this, we're doing this together. We're parents. And so if we're parents, we should be doing this together. We should both be, go ahead.
No. We should both be practicing.
We should both be practicing
these norms that we want our child to have.
Yeah.
And when we don't practice these norms, then we have a child who does not come into a whole person.
Continuing the ideology of men are supposed to be this way and women are supposed to be this way.
Well, aren't we?
To a certain extent.
Okay.
Somewhat. Because, and what I mean by that is, women are supposed to cook, clean, and men are supposed to like.
Men are supposed to provide, protect, shelter, right?
Yes. All
so
that.
Why do we have such this big switch now, where women are doing the providing more than the men?
Because society's changed. We're in a more modern world where women are now.
Oh,
we're going into.
Here we go. Here we go. I had a show with Miss Berry. Hi, Miss Berry. Halle Berry. And she made that very same comment. In these modern times, things have changed.
Yeah.
Well, if you're saying that, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if we start transferring that to our young boys, then what do we get? And what have we gotten?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Why are men, in a pejorative sense, not assuming the roles which society has placed on them in the past?
That is a really good question. That's a really good question. This is my take on it. I think that a lot of men want to be in that role. They want to feel like they can provide and protect, right? But I think the struggle comes because women have changed. The way in which women have become a part of society has changed, and I don't think a lot of men have changed that.
Therapist, you're dancing, you're doing that two-step. Because I want to put in, and I will say that I understand you, okay? But I would also put in that women have raised boys, but they have trained women.
I agree.
And we don't train our boys.
I agree.
That it's okay to cry when you fall down and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But stop it.
Yeah. So it's you cried. We can I can soothe you because again you're 4.
Right.
I can soothe you, but then this is how you recover. It's the same way I do with my daughter. All right, you had your moment. Now let's move on from that moment. But you got to give people time to be able to do that. But I do agree that there are a lot of that the absence of fathers has contributed to how men now see themselves in society.
Now let me bring that back. Absence of fathers, those that voluntarily and are pushed to be absent.
Yes.
The effect that they have on the child is not supportive of the child.
Correct.
How do we change that push to be absent?
And right. And I do lately or within the past decade, a lot of men, I think that, I don't know if you saw it, have been able to get back into that role of father, where there was a huge like just gap like in like the 90s, 80s, 90s, and maybe early 2000s, where in this past decade a lot of fathers are very much more present now, which I think is great. But I do think that we're seeing the effect of having those absent fathers from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
Another study that I just recently read was that we're having a large group of men where those roles have changed and they are now stay-at-home dads.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Is that the natural progression of where we're going?
I don't know. Is it? That's a good question. I'm curious.
Because if women, mothers, continue to train our daughters, then there has to be what you said, a balance.
Yeah.
And how do we get that balance is an issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's a discussion. Because every single day we're dealing with the fact that, and we'll tell you right after this commercial, we'll be right back. You don't go nowhere. Getting married has been made easier. Don't wait. If you are in love, get your wedding ceremony performed virtually or in person at one of our many locations. Get your nuptials in no time. Now you have a friend in the wedding business. Go to streamingvows.com today. And we're back. Every day we're dealing with the issue of where our young men are going to end up.
Yeah.
And the traditional roles have changed. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's bad. But what I am advocating and sharing with our viewers is the need to balance.
Yep.
And that balance starts off with who you get with in the first place.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So let's go back before then, because when you have that normalcy and that man gets with somebody who reminds him of mom, he's looking for mom.
Right.
He's looking for mom to do everything that mom does.
Yep.
But guess what? That woman is allowing him to do it.
Yep, that is true.
Because she, and
has always been in that role.
She's been in that role, but she's also, should I say, not respecting the traditional roles, or has she bought in to the new roles?
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a good way of phrasing that. So it could be, it depends on the woman, I think. I do think that there does become a lack of respect, which you don't want in a relationship. You want to always have respect in your relationship. So even if a person or a man is a stay-at-home dad, there still needs to be respect. Just because you are the one that is working, there still needs to be respect regardless. But what was the other one that you said? Is it a lack of respect, or?
Is it a lack of respect of the traditional male roles? And it's one where it's changed, and now really isn't the expectation?
Yeah. So it's two ways. Because I've seen this happen, where if the woman is making more money than the man, right? Where a woman could hold that over a man's head. And I've also seen where a man feels inadequate.
Less than a man.
Yeah. And she's not even saying, she's not even like saying anything about him, but it's how he feels about himself. So again, it goes back to self-awareness. You got to know about yourself. You got to know that these are my triggers. You got to know that these are my insecurities. You got to know those things, because then I can reflect. When she said this, did she intend to like put me down, or was that just my own issue? Was that my own button?
Well, you know when you putting them down.
But you do know that. But what I'm saying is sometimes a woman or somebody could just make a comment that isn't meant to hurt you, but you feel triggered. And this has nothing to do with what they said. It has everything to do with your own buttons.
Self-awareness of that child to make them a whole person.
Yeah.
What practical steps, what practical things do we do to make them whole and aware of themselves as parents? What should we do?
Talk. It's that simple. You have to talk to them because, like I was saying earlier, kids will make a misinterpretation of anything. They will assign the wrong definition to everything if you don't tell them what it means. So again, I have adults where I have to explain to them, this is what this word actually means. But you've created this idea in your own head that is not true. So
little Trump in there.
So if you talk to your kids and help them understand what's going on. So again, if you and your child's father are at odds with each other and the child is witnessing it, talk to the child afterwards and explain, hey, this is what was going on. This is what happened. Not to put the other parent down. Me and your father had a disagreement. It has nothing to do with you.
Let's switch it around. Me and your mother had a disagreement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? Me and your mama, we just didn't agree on it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I don't care about her.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I don't love her.
Mm-hmm.
It simply means that she ain't right at this time.
Mm-hmm. And I may
You agree to that?
Yeah.
She ain't right.
Wait.
She ain't right. She
wait.
ain't
I didn't hear the last part.
Yes.
I didn't hear the last part.
So we got two parts. One part we got is talking,
Yeah.
listening, and then hearing.
Yes.
Which is one of the issues I really want you to tell our viewers about. How do you actively listen and hear?
Yeah. It's like it's a very simple concept, but people really struggle with active listening. So with active listening, the first thing you gotta do is actually listen. You gotta hear, right?
Okay.
So, because hearing and listening,
there are two different things.
Yeah.
And you tell me, is this right? Active listening is the process of receiving the information.
Yeah.
Hearing is the process of understanding the information. Am I close there?
It's switch it. So,
Okay.
because I can hear everything, right?
Okay.
Everything that's going on around here. Like, you could be talking to me and I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to what you're saying.
Okay.
So, hearing is simply the sounds that is coming into your earlobe. But listening is me actually taking in what you're saying. So
Okay.
just flip it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, with listening, and this is the part that people struggle with, is you may be saying something. Like just what happened when I said, wait, I didn't hear that. I wasn't listening at that part.
Mm-hmm.
I did hear you were saying something, but I wasn't listening, right?
Okay.
But what happens a lot of times is people are in communication and you say one point and I get stuck on that one point and I'm not listening to nothing else that you're saying. I'm hearing everything you're saying it to me. Sure, I know you're talking, but I'm now in my own head trying to figure out how I'm going to fight against what you just said.
Without hearing, without going on. Okay, so you stuck.
So you stuck.
Lord.
And so I could start off my sentence saying, Harry, I did not like the way that you gave me this mug. Next time I would appreciate it if you, but you don't hear the next time part. All you heard was, I ain't like that mug. And now you gotta jump on me about, well, why you don't like my mug? And it's like, wait a minute.
Well, isn't that the same challenge we have with our kids?
Yeah. And so that's why you have to teach them how to listen. Child, like the other day, my child was had an attitude with me. And I said, whoa, that's not how we talk to each other. You're not going to have an attitude with me. If I don't have an attitude with you, you don't hear me speak like that to you. So what is it that you're trying to say? Let's try this again. You have to teach them how to talk. Mm-hmm. She might have picked that up somewhere at school, but I said, no, ma'am.
Now,
we have to talk with respect.
We've been through toddlers. We've been through adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
teenagers.
But adolescence is what, that 12 to 14?
Uh-huh.
Okay, 12 to 14. Let's go right there for a minute.
Okay.
Why is that such a difficult time?
They're going through a lot of transitions at that time. So that's middle school age. So they are going through the fact that they're no longer considered kids. They're no longer in that elementary age. They're going into a new environment, which is middle school, where they're having to be with older kids in a sense. They're being introduced to a lot more things at that age, and puberty is happening. Also,
let's define that. That we're talking about now the physiological change.
Yes.
And that affects everything.
Right.
That affect it. When you start, okay, 13, 14.
That
look
right there.
Look at that.
Right.
Okay.
And then your social status in the world. That's where that part is happening right there in middle school. So in elementary school, you may have the popular kids to a certain extent, but in middle school, that's when you really start to see, well, I belong in this group, I belong in this group, or I belong in this group.
Now, how influential are these co-parents, lack of co-parenting? How does it start at this time magnifying the problems of this young adult?
That's when it really starts to be seen. Because in elementary, like I tell people all the time, like you good 10 and under. We're really still trying to get them. But around middle school age, again, it's so many different influences coming at them at once. And whatever they learn between 0 and 10 about who they are and where and how they communicate, all that stuff, you're going to start to see the product of that in middle school. You still have somewhat of a chance to really try to change something.
How do you do it? Tell out there. Listen, y'all listen. So, we're talking about, and I want to zero in on this because you, as you know, as I do, nobody wants to go to jail. But you be so bad, you be ready to kill them. How do you take that last push to get them straight before they go to high school?
So if you start to recognize that things are starting to go downhill, again, you may have to open up the lane of communication. Then you may want to put them around a certain or a different environment. If you're noticing your kid is like, okay, well, something's going on, whether it is the school that they're at. So maybe if I can't change the school, maybe I can still have some positive things in their life. So if that is an after school program, or if that is a extracurricular activity, something that's more positive, so that way they are getting that part in their lives.
You're talking about separating them now.
Yeah.
Separate, associate, control.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, hold on right there. We'll be right back after word from our commercial. Y'all don't go nowhere now. Getting married has been made easier. Don't wait. If you are in love, get your wedding ceremony performed virtually or in person at one of our many locations. Get your nuptials in no time. Now you have a friend in the wedding business. Go to streamingvows.com today. Is this your last Sebastian to control that young adult before you lose it?
Yeah, because by the time they get to high school, a lot of times they're already kind of not stuck, but like who they are in terms of like the attitude, how I behave, all of that is really settled in by the time they get to high school. And then they don't want to listen to you no more as a parent, because, and this is where I think a parent struggle is, well, for the kids, for the first 14 years of my life, you wasn't listening to me.
Oh.
And so now you want me to listen to you? No. Now I know how I'm going to be as it pertains to you, because the relationship that we've developed hasn't been that great.
Is this also a time where they start mimicking what they've seen?
They've been mimicking it.
They've been mimicking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But now it's on 100.
Okay.
Because if you haven't respected who I am, it's forget the fact that I'm a child. You haven't respected me and who I am. At 14, 15, 16, now I feel we're on the same level at this point in their heads. They're like, we the same height.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can yell just as loud as you.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, and I've lost all respect for you because for 14 years, you could have earned my respect. We could have had a mutually respectful relationship. But once that lack of respect or that respect is gone, that means I don't care how I talk to you no more.
Let me ask you this. How influential is that other parent in garnering, fostering, or destroying the respect that they have for that other parent?
How responsible are they, you said?
Yeah.
There is some responsibility there.
Okay.
If both parents are equally in their child's life, I think that, it could work.
Okay.
Now, if you barely in that child life, yeah, you definitely destroyed that entire relationship. So some parents will try to bring, especially like the dads, to come in like, all right, you the authority figure. That's the only time the child interacts with the dad.
Well, and I understand that portion. The portion I'm zeroing in on is the primary custodial parent.
Mm-hmm.
The influence that they have by directing their anger, their disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
their frustration, directing that to the other parent through the child.
Oh, I do not agree with that at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Because, so what you're saying is, if I, as the custodial parent, am talking to my child about the other parent, yeah, no. If it is
in a negative light,
right? Of course, yeah. I don't condone that at all because it will obviously influence how they see that parent. Now, if I'm not saying anything and you just make your own interpretation of that other parent, that's on you.
So in other words, you're saying you don't have to.
No, they'll see it eventually.
They'll see it.
They'll see it.
So would you advise that what they should say are things that placate or at least give excuse, or what?
So
Daddy's sick, Mama's sick, Mama don't feel well right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mama had to work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
Is that a helpful thing, or should you just say, well, Mama has something to do, so we'll just go on and get ice cream ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about being honest. So if the parent...
Daddy ain't about not that honest.
So yeah, like honest in terms of what a child's capable of understanding. So
now you're talking about development, capable of understanding.
Yeah.
At what point in time do we define with our children a capacity to understand?
That's all about learning a child, because some kids are very intelligent. And by intelligent I mean like book smart.
Okay.
Right. So they may have some ability to understand that. I mean, you got other kids that are street smart, right? And I mean, this is how it is as adults, right? You got some people that's street smart, some people that's book smart. It's the same thing with kids. So you have to know. But
when's that emotional? What I'm trying to say is that, see, and I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because the emotional part of Daddy didn't show up today.
Right.
Mama didn't show up today.
Right.
How does the custodial parent heal that or supplant?
Go ahead and ask them, how does that make you feel?
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes me feel sad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Why does it make you feel sad?
It makes me feel sad because I really wanted to see him.
Yeah. And that can be very disappointing when you really want to see your dad and he doesn't come. But, and then you show or tell them, hey, what we're going to do instead is I'm going to take you for ice cream because that might make you feel a little bit better. But it's okay to feel disappointed.
It's okay to feel disappointed.
It's okay to feel disappointed.
At some point in time, they stop disappointed because they stop expecting.
Yes.
Is it the expectation that we are lowering, or that we are guiding, or that we are developing? The expectation without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
We want to develop that expectation of our children without the judgment associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a whirlwind of information.
Yeah.
Ms. Dawson, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to ask you if you would come back.
Sure, yeah.
And when you do, I'm going to have a male therapist here.
Okay.
Hey, it's going to be on. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Keep those calls, those emails, those comments coming in. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on Child Support Court, the Vodcast with Judge Harry Bowden. Take care now.